Hi, this is Sensei James Leonelli from Sensei's Weekly Mindset, and I'm here to talk to you about betonline.net. Betonline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball, soccer, and esports. Don't forget my personal favorite, MMA. We've got it all on betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, we can help you find those on BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. And don't forget BetOnline for NHL, boxing, golf, and like I said, my personal favorite, the sport of MMA. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode. Life isn't always easy, and you don't have to face it alone. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it's 100% online. With BetterHelp, you have access to a network of over 25,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of needs. To get started, you simply answer a few questions about your needs and preferences in therapy. That way, BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. Then you talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's via text, chat, phone, or video call. You can message your therapist at any time and schedule live sessions when it's most convenient for you. The best part is, if your therapist isn't the right fit for any reason, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality you expect from in-office therapy, but with a therapist who is custom-picked for you, more scheduling flexibility, and at a more affordable price, all from the comfort at home. To start your journey and to get 10% off of your first month, go to betterhelp.com/sensei. That's betterhelp.com/sensei. BetterHelp, you deserve to be happy. Hi guys, Sensei James Leonelli here to talk to you about another one of our sponsors, LMNT. An electrolyte drink mix. Each one of these little packets gives you exactly what you need to keep you as hydrated as all us athletes like to be. If you're like me, you work out a lot, and when you work out a lot, you also sweat a lot. Now, when we sweat, we don't lose just water, of course. We also sweat out salt. We sweat out electrolytes. So each one of these packets contains 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium, giving you everything that you need in order to maintain optimal hydration and nothing that you don't. So to go online, place an order for your sample pack, and to get yourself a bonus free sample pack, you're going to go to this website right here, elementallabs.refr.cc/James Leonelli. You're going to see this down in the video below, but I'll say it one more time for you. elementallabs.refr.cc/James Leonelli. Again, it's a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing that you don't. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Sensei's Weekly Mindset. I'm Sensei James Leonelli, owner and head instructor of Tiger Schulman's here in Smithtown. Once again, I am back in my home recording space, ready to give you guys this week's food for thought and review a little bit of what happened at Flex Fights 36 this past weekend. So as I'm sitting here, you can see I'm wearing again a little more of the 40th anniversary collection. Yes, I've worn this one a lot. It's honestly one of my favorite shirts. I mean, the fit on it is great. It's really tapered nicely. The material is very comfortable. The shirt's very soft. And I really like the image on the back. It's a really cool image. Old school karate image from Tiger Schulman and his brother Shion Schulman. Check it out on tigear.com, TIGEAR.com. So as we entered weigh-in day of Flex Fights last Friday, we had 33 fights in the card. By the time we ended weigh-ins, we had 32 fights in the card, which is an absolute ton. That is a ton of fights, and that included amateur MMA, amateur kickboxing, pro MMA, and pro kickboxing, all four. And that includes then two different sanctioning bodies because in New York State, the New York State Athletic Commission sanctions pros, and the ISKA is the sanctioning body for all the amateur kickboxing and MMA, as well as the pro kickboxing. So you could imagine what an absolute just mess it was in terms of jurisdiction, in terms of who was under control during which fights, and then to add it all off, we were on Fubo at 8 o'clock at night, as I mentioned, and that in and of itself is its own pressure, because 8 o'clock comes and we're going, like, basically no matter what. We just go right into it, and we started out the night like pretty strong in terms of being able to stay on schedule. We had a really quick knockout in our first fight. Only took about a minute or so. A gentleman who is kind of redeeming himself in the flex fight cage in Razan Gross scored a quick knockout. We wound up losing our second fight on fight day. That was scheduled to be fight 2. Not really sure what happened there. I heard that the inspectors saw something they didn't like in the background, but again, didn't get that like confirmed or anything. Just what was the chatter. Because once the fight started, I left my chair to go to the restroom twice, and that was the extent of me leaving my chair for the entire rest of the day. Fight started at about 4:30, and I think I left the chair by like 1 o'clock in the morning. So quite a long night, nonetheless. Moved on into a third fight. What is going to be our third fight actually was our second fight. Another quick stoppage. Then we moved on to the next fight. Another quick stoppage. Moved on to the next fight. And this one was a second round stoppage, if I recall correctly. Then again, another second round stoppage. So we were like making really good time here. Like everything was going well. I think we had our first decision of the night next. And then, if I recall correctly, we had another, trying to recall exactly, because again, 31 fights. Moved back into the World MMA, had another quick finish, a long fought, well fought decision from 2 young guys, both making amateur MMA debuts. Really awesome back and forth fight, but once again, went to decision. Then another fight that went to decision, and then I believe we went to decision in this next one. I believe this one I think was a finish. Pretty sure. I guess I'm scrolling through here, my notes here. So it was fight number, it was scheduled to be 12, wound up being 13. That fight was a finish. Fight after was also a finish, I believe. Then a finish again. So like we started to pick up this finish rate again, where we're like, oh great, we're getting the quick finishes we need in order to be able to kind of move on and get to television on time. But it wasn't just that fights held us up or whatever. There's always little silly technical difficulties. There's always silly things that just go wrong. And then there's just the natural time that things are going to take. We can't control how fast an inspector does their inspection of the fighter at ringside. Sometimes they can kind of buzz through it. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes there's, the guy takes a little longer to say goodbye to his to kind of hug it out and everything with his team before he gets in the cage. Sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes they walk out a little faster. Sometimes they walk out a little slower. Really not much of a way for us to be able to predict that as we walk out. We can kind of do the math like, okay, we average a fight, every X amount of time, and then, okay, we'll extrapolate out. We want to be on flex. We want to be on Fubo by 8, so we've got to move these things around like this. And for the most part, we had things playing out pretty well. When we started to get into the more advanced fights, things started to slow down decision-wise. We got a couple of decisions there as well. Another decision that I'm watching here, and then we get to about 7:50 or so. And I was kind of wondering, like, will we, won't we, will we, won't we, will we, won't we? Like, are we going to have a fight going and just kind of join it in action for the Fubo audience? Or, better yet, it's about 10 minutes till we're supposed to be on Fubo. Are we going to walk these guys out, or are we going to wait until we're on Fubo and then push them in? Because we didn't, we wound up going onto Fubo with a couple of amateur fights, or at least one amateur fight first. Before we moved our way into the pros. So we wound up moving. I think we had 2 AMI fights, I believe, on Flex before we moved our way on Fubo, before we moved our way into the pros, which certainly made for a little bit of confusion, because again, then as a broadcaster we have to explain the differences between amateur and pro, the different rule sets and so forth. Then ironically, once we got onto Fubo, we're just finishing fights and kind of buzzing through them really, really well. As far as our pro fights went, Tyler McNett won by finish. Rocco Jambroni won by finish. Troy Green won by finish. Omar Ahmed won by finish. So that was our first kickboxing fight of the night. Omar, I think, won in less than a minute. So we buzzed through these fights. We had an absolute war between Sergio Rivera and Mark Evan Williams. Man, first off, I would be remiss if I did not take the time to point out just the sheer athleticism of these two gentlemen. Fight taking place at 125 pounds. So not the biggest guys in the world, but oh my God, these guys were so fast. And so athletic too. We were watching the fight, and anytime we thought we saw like a crazy cool moment, there was another crazy cool moment behind it. Like one of the ones that just stands out, and it was in the highlight reel. Sergio countered, I forget it was a punch or a kick, I think it was a kick, of Mark Avian with a straight left hand. And when he did, I pushed his head back, and it wasn't like the biggest punch in the world, but Mark Avian was kind of moving with it and off balance. He does a cartwheel out of being knocked over, kind of bounces off the cage and comes back and throws a punch. It was one of the single most impressive things I've ever seen. I've seen guys bounce off the cage. I've seen guys, do cartwheels, of course, as Riley does them nonstop. But I've never seen someone mid-fight get hit, turn it into a cartwheel, and use it to bounce back and come back and throw a punch. Insane. It was one of those fights where I looked at my 2 broadcast partners afterwards, and I was like, I have no idea who won that fight. None. No idea. Like, I was just so busy being impressed in the moment by how fast Sergio looked, or the other crazy things Mark Avian was throwing out there, that I was like, I have no clue who I believe won that fight. There are some times that I'm sitting in the chair and I know who won the fight. Often our conversation will lead us that way, just because that is the story of the fight, is, this person clearly won. Other times it's debatable, and, we'll ask each other, what is your scorecard? What is your scorecard? And when that happens, it was, that then I kind of have to give an answer. I don't love to, in close fights, unless I'm asked, really, like, pick a winner, and maybe, because then maybe I want to pick in the person the judges pick the other person, and maybe the person who lost gets insulted, and I prefer not to do it just off the cuff. But of course, if one of my broadcast partners is like, here's how I have it scored, how do you have it scored? Well, then of course I'm going to give my feedback. And we had that a couple of times. And some of the times the judges agreed with us, other times they did not. We had this absolute war of a fight that I would be remiss not to mention. Alex Jacquelone versus Javier Cabezas. Oh my gosh. It was funny. TJ Ragusa put a clip of the fight up. He videoed a clip of the fight from cage side as these 2 guys went to battle. And he goes, these guys are really trying to kill each other on international television. And they were. Like, Alex is a true pressure fighter. He is a real, he's an avalanche to fight. Just the momentum gets going, and he just keeps coming and keeps coming and keeps coming. And he's pressing his way into the pocket where he likes to try to put people against the fence and let big body shots go. And Javier, to his credit, did not really let himself get pinned against the cage. Or if he did, he was defending himself well and firing back and making sure that Alex had to, move or let him out of the corner or whatever. And then eventually, the crazy, again, one of those fights where I'm like, I don't know who's winning, because Alex is pressing forward and, he's landing good shots. But to his credit, Javier is minding angles and cutting angles and throwing back and landing big shots too. And then in the 3rd round, I'd say we probably had about 45 seconds left. Javier lands this uppercut, And it was funny because one of my broadcast partners, D-Rock, mentioned, Alex is leaning with his head forward quite a bit. He better be careful with that. He mentioned about 2 minutes earlier. And then, boom, Javier hits him with this uppercut, and Alex's legs go, and he's winding up on the ground like, oh my gosh, what just happened to me? And Javier smelled blood in the water, and he rushes in, knocks him down again. And now there's seconds left, and Javier comes in, boom, rushes him again, and again takes him off his feet, and 3 knockdowns in a round is enough to end the fight. But man, an absolute battle. Like really, it's one of the fights I'm most looking forward to going back and watching. And I strongly recommend that if you guys have not yet watched the broadcast, that you go back, find this fight, and watch it. Because, oh my gosh. I mean, not to mention the pro fights. Like, Rocco Giambroni looked phenomenal. He got clipped early. He was in some trouble. Fought back from the adversity. Ate like a big right hand and kind of cut a little angle. Boom, landed one of his own. And was able to jump in for the finish. Omar Ahmed in our pro kickboxing finish looked incredible. He landed real quick, and when he did, he landed a shot that got his opponent's attention and drew a knockdown, and that was about all she wrote. And then Troy Green, I mean, oh my gosh, this guy just first off built like an absolute Adonis. Like there are action figures who have less impressive physiques than Troy Green, and he in like an opening exchange takes a funky step, and D-Rock notices he twisted his ankle pretty good. And they spend a lot of time wrestling and throwing some shots up against the cage and this and that and the other. And a couple of seconds left in the fight. And Troy just slides back, or in the first round I should say. Troy slides back and boom, uncorks this right hand. And it wasn't the biggest looking punch in the world. Like it wasn't like Troy wound up and made a big movie punch. Just perfect technique, turned it all over, 2 knuckles to chin. And Raymond Ceballos winds up sitting on his butt against the cage. His arms had kind of flailed a little bit on the way down. And it was a stoppage that some people might think was a quick stoppage. But I don't know, watching it back and watching the way that Raymond's arms reacted when he got hit, they certainly were telling me a tale of someone who was out. And to me, like the most telling part of a stoppage is how the fighter who drew the stoppage reacts. If they're like, oh man, you stopped that fight too early, and they get argumentative, okay, then maybe there's a case in here because they have the faculties there to actually make the argument. But if a fighter gets up and they're like, yep, you got me, again, that's very telling to me, very, very telling to me. Another amateur title fight that was really worth its weight in gold was an amateur interim title fight that we had at 155 pounds. We had 2 very experienced kickboxers meeting in an MMA fight. Between them in MMA, they only had, walking into the fight, 7 fights. So not a ton between 2 athletes. But they had a ton of kickboxing fights between them. Like I think the total between the 2 was nearly 20. So guys who'd been in the ring a lot and very skilled strikers. And it was a competitive fight. Again, really good technique shown by both. But Eden's under pressure Charles comes out and just a phenomenal job. It was a really good fight against a really tough opponent. And again, one of our favorite fights of the night in the booth was we had Luke the Truth Hart versus the assassin Thomas Davis. And one of the things my other broadcast partner Alex Cassiano talks about all the time is nicknames that might be a little played out. That it's funny because his example is always the assassin. He's like, there are so many guys with the nickname the assassin. Like guys, come on, let's be a little more original. And he spat out some ideas, and same thing about Luke the Truth Hart. And on the broadcast, D-Rock goes in to do a post-fight interview, and he puts Alex right on the spot, or he puts Luke Hart right on the spot, calling out Alex and blowing up his spot a little bit, which was quite funny and entertaining. But nonetheless, a lot of what came on Saturday, like we did a live open on Fubo, and we rehearsed it like for 15 seconds. Like it was really very little rehearsal, but it came because of a lot of what I talked about last week, just preparation. We were prepared, we were ready, we had our reps in, right? And it was funny. That's kind of the barometer, like the thing that makes everything worthwhile, the thing that makes a person good at anything is experience. And that was kind of like one of the lessons for the night. We saw it well throughout the fights, guys who were very experienced versus guys who weren't. Like we had one guy who was on a bit of a skid. He had lost 3 fights in a row, and we didn't think his losses were indicative of the talent this particular fighter had. And he was fighting a debuting fighter, and the debuting fighter had much less training. And it showed real quick. But, and the fighter who had been on a bit of a skid, he did finally get a win that we were very happy to see him get. But nonetheless, it was the story of the night really was experience, and like the reps, the time that a person has been in there. And it obviously very important in the cage, but also very important outside of it. The producer we work with, Mike, he's got so many reps of producing a live event that it's really easy for him to do it, and he knows what we need, and we kind of know how to play off of him, and we know the things to say on the broadcast to kind of cue him to give us whatever he might have, and he communicates with us well. We in the booth have enough reps, not only individually, but with each other. I've done commentary with Alex a bunch of times now, with D-Rock a bunch of times now, and the 3 of us have done it together a bunch of times. So the dynamic between us, I think, is very good. Like, we know when to fill a hole, when to not. We know how to cue each other up and when to not. And we kind of know where each other is going as we're working our way through the broadcast. And again, that just comes from putting the reps in. And it's the thing that can't be replaced, right? There's absolutely no substitute for experience. Even earlier today in training, I had one of my friends who hadn't been around in a while came back to train with us, and he texted myself and Sensei Stein later in the day, just thanking us for welcoming him back and so on and so forth. And we talked about, we may not be the young bucks anymore. And I was like, yeah, we traded youth and athleticism for, experience and wisdom. And my friend's like, yeah, not a very even change, but one that's definitely far more valuable. And that's the thing, like you cannot substitute repetitions. There's no way to do it. You can borrow experience from others and advance a little faster. And really that's kind of the martial arts way, right? Like I hope that when the guys who teach underneath me now get to my experience level in teaching, that their skill level is much higher. That they get to the skill level that I'm at faster than I got here. And that's kind of what makes an instructor, a good instructor anyway, is they try to make their students get to that experience level, get to that skill level faster than they did, or better than they did, or a higher level of skill. And that's super important. Again, there's no substitute for the reps, but you don't necessarily have to be the one that did them all, right? If you're putting in the repetitions, but you learn lessons from someone who also put in repetitions, it can put you a few repetitions ahead, by all means, right? Like the old adage of, is it better to have the kid burn their hand on the stove or just never touch the stove because their parents told them not to, right? Like I never touched the hot stove because my parents told me not to, right? You can borrow some of those reps from other people, right? But there is no substitute for experience. There is no substitute for reps. The more experience you have in something, the more repetitions you have in it, simply put, the better you will get. It's why 36 Flex Fight Series in, the production is better than it's ever been. The fighters are better than they've ever been. The commentary is better than it's ever been. The production itself is better than it's ever been because we have so many reps under our belt. There's a reason that, martial arts of someone who's very experienced is at such a high level because they've sharpened that blade so much. They've been there and done that, and they've put so many repetitions in, right? They have the experience behind them, and there is no substitute for it. You can't cheat through it, right? So that really is the lesson of the day, and the lesson I took from Flex is how important experience is and just what experience does for you, how experience puts you ahead of the game, right? And not everything lends itself to where you can have the easiest experience in the world right away, right? Sometimes you got to suffer through some bad ones, right? You got to trip over your own feet a little bit to learn how to walk. And there are some things that work in that way, where the beginning repetitions are not that fun, right? Exercise is a great example. The first few exercise sessions, if you're pushing yourself, are not going to be that fun. But as you get more skilled and you put the repetitions in, you're going to find yourself in better and better and better places all the time. So that's all I have for you guys this week. The review of flex fights and the reminder, get your reps in, put the experience out there. It's the only way to improve yourselves at a high level. All I have for you guys this week, like I said, as always, you can reach me via email, senseileonelli@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at sensei_Leonelli. On Facebook, I'm Sensei James Leonelli. You can go to my linktree, linktr.ee/Sensei Leonelli. That's where you can find everything about flex fights, everything about Swing for the Stars, everything about our sponsors, and everything else you need to know. Sponsorship opportunities still available. Make sure you reach out to me any of the ways that I gave you. I did recently hear back from a sponsor, so that's pretty cool. Anybody else would love to sponsor, I'd love to have you. Other than that, my friends, find my school online, tsmasmithtown.com. You can go on Twitter and Instagram, we're at tsmmasmithtown. On Facebook, we're at facebook.com/Tiger-Schulman-Smithtown. Find more about the Tiger Schulman's organization as a whole at tsk.com. The podcast is on Instagram at Sensei's Weekly Mindset. Make sure that you guys leave a rate and review. Just helps. Make sure you guys subscribe. Get your new episodes every Wednesday. But the most important thing you can do for me, guys, share the podcast. It's the only form of advertising that I have. So I very much appreciate when I see you guys doing it. Other than that, my friends, until next time, invest in yourselves. I'll see you guys on the mat.